Hello, hello, hello. If my voice sounds a little rough, it's kind of a little husky. I don't know if you can tell, but I was up until 2:30 in the morning last night or this morning, uh, getting some stuff done. And I'm in a very busy season right now. But last night I stayed up working on my newsletter, my monthly newsletter, and my newsletter takes a little bit of time because I like to put some sort of thought or lesson or something that will be of value to my readers of my newsletter. And I like to put my favorite things on it, so give recommendations. So, anyways, that took some time, and I'm in the process of. We just opened the Facebook group, the free training, the Facebook group that's associated with the free training. If you're not on Facebook, you can still join. Just FYI, we put the training also on a website. So don't let, I've had people email me and say, oh, I'm not on Facebook. And it's okay. You just don't get all the interaction that you would get in the Facebook group. So if you're not on Facebook, I also recommend just get an account, and you can delete it after the training. But that way you're engaged with the other people. But anyways, it's a new one I'm doing. I'm excited about it. It's really focused on finding and pursuing purpose and the obstacles that keep us from finding it, like what the blocks are and why we have them. And I've come up with these purpose personalities. It's a tongue twister. So I'm excited to share those and get the reaction from people and see if people can relate, if one of them resonates. So we're talking about that. And so this podcast episode is something that I'm actually going to talk about in training 3. It's also something that I teach. I help my students in the second half Spark School do this. And it's actually a very big part of my school. And it's something that really is transformational. And I'm getting ready to open the school. The school is opening for enrollment the 6th of February. So if you're curious about what it is, then you should join my free training, because I'm going to talk a little bit. I'll have some references in the free training about it, but I touch on some of the stuff that I do in the school. And of course, follow me on social media because you'll be hearing about it. But anyways, I only opened twice last year. So it's not open it's like open last year 8 days out of the 365 days that there were. So yeah, so it's not something that's open all the time that you can get into. And it's like it's group coaching. So it's kind of like you experience it together with other women who are in the same situation as you. And that is like just a really big gift of learning, is experiencing it, knowing you're not alone, and seeing other people transform makes you realize you're capable of doing the same. And so it's just, and they become really connected with each other. So something I really love doing. I'm so glad I created it because it really serves a need. And so I want to talk about this topic because it's something that blocks a lot of people from really experiencing life to its absolute fullest. And that's what I want for everyone, is for you to wake up every morning and feel excited about what your life is all about, that you feel this deep inner sense of joy. And it's not, you don't need to go seek it from somebody else or something that you need. But it's there, and it's always available to you because it comes from within. And so the episode today is about the lessons in danger and not truly knowing yourself. This basically comes down to, we are so critical of ourselves, and we're so out of touch with who we came here to be. We're so out of touch with the fact that we came here as this most powerful, most creative, most limitless soul. And that soul came here, selected this life to live. And if we aren't connected with that, and at a basic level, and then really know our uniqueness why we shine, if we don't really know ourselves, we can't shine our brightest. We dull our light. And so you have to, first of all, understand that we're all the same. We all came into the world the same, with this blank slate, with these desires, and then life got in the way. Life, like, it was this kind of thing that beat us down in many ways, right? We have this human brain, and our human brain gets in the way of a lot of things. It blocks us from our heart. And the heart is where the desire and really the knowing comes from. And the brain talks us out of that for societal purposes, for approval purposes, for gaining love purposes. It's all these things that get in the way of us really knowing ourselves. And even if we do know ourselves, not allowing us to embrace it and live from that place. So I'm going to talk about, I have 7 things. And I was thinking about it this morning. Do you remember those little cartoons of these little cute people? And it was happiness is ... And it would say happiness is, and it would always have some little one-liner about what happiness is. And so this, I feel, is like knowing yourself is ... So each of these 7 things are going to be like a ... about knowing yourself, but what the opposite, not knowing yourself, and what the indications are. So if any of these 7 things are really relatable or really hit home, or you're like, ugh, then that's an area you need to focus on. And I hope this helps. This episode is for you to get to know yourself better. That's what I want for you. Inspire you to take some action. And maybe it's just the first action is as simple as signing up for my free training if you're not already signed up for it, because we're going to dig into this, and it'll definitely help. Maybe you'll know yourself a little bit better by the end of it. All right. Number 1, these are the signs that you might not really truly know yourself. You feel lost. And I'll tell you, when people come into my Facebook group, I ask them 2 questions. The first question is, what's the number 1 word to describe how you feel today in your life, how you feel about your life? And number 2, what do you want to gain from the training? Because I always like to make sure that they're in the right place and that the training will actually help them with that second answer. But the first answer that I'm getting is empty, lost, aimless, directionless. Well, when you're aimless and directionless, you're lost. And so this is very common when you don't know yourself. It's one of the signs you don't know yourself. Because if you knew yourself, you'd know where you're going. Knowing yourself means knowing a few things, knowing what you value. And that's something that I didn't even know 3 or 4 years ago. I was like, what do I value? And I went through this exercise and I was like, wow, is my life aligned with those values? Are my actions aligned with those values? Well, no wonder you feel lost, because if you don't know what you value, you're not probably operating from those values. You might not be hanging out with people who have similar values. So you have to know what you value. You have to know your desires, your needs, what fulfills you, not what fulfills your mother who you're taking care of, or your husband who needs dinner every night, or fill in the blank of all the people that we serve and their needs as moms. If you were a mom, like I was a mom, yeah, that's what we did, served other people's needs. So we don't know ourselves if we're constantly serving other people's needs and we don't know our own needs. Your fears. And this is a big part of my free training that I'm going to get into. And I'm going to help you identify what your fears are. So you're going to know yourself better just from uncovering that. Our fears are very invisible to us. for most of us. And identifying those is the first step to tackling them and realizing that they're just like preventing us from having the life we want, from truly knowing ourselves. And also knowing yourself means knowing what matters to you, what's important. And if you didn't know these things I just listed, if you didn't know your values, your desires, your needs, your fears, and what matters to you, you'll have a hard time figuring out what you want to do with your life. So if you're feeling lost, some of these things might be the issue here. For me, check them all off. That's where I was a few years ago. Okay, number 2 is you don't know what you're doing with your life. You don't have goals or dreams. You're out of touch with that. And for me, I was, because I was too busy. Who has time? Who has time to sit down and figure out their goals and dreams? I'm working on my company's goals, and I could come home exhausted. Forget about my personal life and my goals and dreams. It was blinders on, nose to the grindstone, hamster wheel scenario. So knowing yourself means knowing where you're headed in life, means knowing your goals and dreams. That's where you're headed, and that's where you should be focused. Number 3, you probably have low self-esteem, low confidence, it might show up as. Knowing yourself means accepting yourself. We are so critical of ourselves. We're so judgy about ourselves. In fact, my newsletter talks about how I was judging myself, and it's been a constant battle my whole life, and it comes from childhood, and I know why. I've identified it, but it's really stunted my growth. But once I identified that, my growth skyrocketed. But it's still something I struggle with. But I'm aware of it, and that's the key. Being aware of it and then recognizing it, and when it pops up, you deal with it, and you're honest about it, and you accept it, and it's something that is just part of who you are. You know yourself. When you're aware, you know yourself. You have what you can say are flaws. They're just not your strengths. Let's call them that, not your strengths. You know your strengths. You know what lane you're fastest in and what lane you kind of putter in. So when you have low self-esteem or low confidence, you don't know yourself. 4, you want others to tell you what to do. Do you do this? Or do you know somebody who does? They're always asking other people to tell them what to do. It might come across as advice, but they really want to do what you tell them to do because they're too afraid to lean into what they think they need to do. And let me tell you, everybody knows what they need to do. They're just too afraid to do it because their brain is always talking them out of the thing that they know they need to do, the desire within. So knowing yourself means not letting others make decisions that are yours alone to make. Yes, you can ask for advice, but ultimately, don't take their advice. Lean into what your heart is saying, what is really good about other people's advice is when advice comes to you and you're resistant to it. When you're resistant to advice, that's not your brain, that's your heart. And when you try to talk yourself into somebody else's advice, that's coming from your brain. So knowing yourself, knowing what your heart wants, and not letting other people decide that for you, not trusting yourself to make the decisions, not letting others tell you what to do. And this could be a pattern in your life. So know yourself and know that that's happening. Number 5, you let others take advantage of you. Knowing yourself means setting boundaries and not saying yes just to please others or because you think that's what you need to do. I see this so much. People are exhausted. Their cup is continually empty because they keep pouring into other people. and they think that's what they should do. But in fact, it's what they should not do, because if they're completely drained in doing it, then their light isn't shining the brightest. So is this something you struggle with? Is this something you struggle to set boundaries? You can't say no, and you're always saying yes. And you say yes for the wrong reasons, because of obligation or guilt, instead of because you get to. I love that. You always tune into, is it a should or is it I get to? And it's not being selfish, because ultimately it's selfish to the world if you're not giving your best self out there. Remember that. 6, you don't know how to set goals or prioritize. This is a biggie, and I teach this in the Second Half Spark School. We make it seem complicated. We make it seem like it's time consuming, when in fact, knowing yourself means knowing what you want. That is important, and making a plan that's focused on that, that's focused on those goals. There's these, I call them wingers, and wingers really like to be wingers because they're kind of proud of it, because it's like, I'm not tied to a schedule. I'm not tied to, oh, goals get me like stressed. Well, I would challenge that and say, well, if your goals are stressing you, they're probably not goals that are aligned with your values, or not something that has meaning to you. But you really need a plan. And if you don't have a plan, you might not know yourself. That's a sign that if you don't have a goal with plans on how to reach those goals, then do you really know what you want? It's just being really passionate about what you want, and really like, nothing's going to stop me from doing this because it has so much meaning and purpose to me. It matters to me. Then you would set a goal around it. And a plan is like part of the goal setting process and the goal accomplishing process. People just, I think, I don't know, some people just have this allergic reaction to it. But then once you make it a habit, it becomes just a part of you, and it's a cycle, and you just like set new goals and you adjust goals, and goals don't have to be permanent either, because you evolve. And as you evolve, you adjust your goals. And as you learn new things and as you take the next step, you're like, oh, that's informing me if I need to go this way, veer off the path a little bit and go in this new path. So people, I think, also think that goals are concrete, and they're not. Just like you, ever growing, your goals will continue to grow and evolve. And 7, the last thing on my list, you worry too much about what others think. This is the judgy part. This is what I struggle with myself. Knowing yourself means you have a clear sense of who you are, and you're not trying to fit into somebody else's standard to be accepted. And this happens. I mean, you see it a lot when you're a kid, like trying to fit in with the cool club, but it continues into adulthood. And if you're judging other people, then that's a mirror, because when you're judging other people, you're comparing them to yourself. So it's an inward judgment. I know this because this is me. This is me. And I really work on this, but I have identified things in my childhood that have created this need for value, this need to be seen and be heard and to feel valued. And when that is one of your driving forces in life, you become judgmental, you become critical of other people, perhaps, but that's critical of yourself. You're constantly evaluating yourself through other people. And so awareness, number 1, of knowing who you are and why you react in certain ways. And then you have a deeper knowing of yourself, because you know why you react to things. You know why you behave certain ways. You know why you're thinking certain ways. And you can't change your thinking until you know yourself and why you're thinking it. It sounds a little complicated. What is complicated is accepting that our thoughts are keeping us from knowing ourselves, and that the complication comes in when you think, well, these are my thoughts, and how can I change my thoughts because they're constantly there? I can't change them. They're just there. Am I just have to deal with them? How is that helping? Well, your thoughts are driving your actions, and your thoughts are causing you to behave in an inauthentic way against your, if you really know yourself, you're going to recognize when your thoughts are driving you to an inauthentic way of being. And the good news is that once you know that, it's not so complicated because you can change it. And it's not complicated. But what's driving your thoughts, and I go into detail on this in my training. So if this is interesting to you and you want to dig deeper, but your thoughts come from your beliefs, and our beliefs are not fact. Their opinion, their perspective, they're the glasses we're wearing, the lens, the color of the lens that we are looking out of. And so you can change those, and you can alter your beliefs, but you have to be open. You have to be open. You have to recognize there's a problem. You have to accept the fact that it needs to change. If anything's going to change and you don't like how your life is right now, you need to be open to explore, and you need to take action and educate yourself. So you're educating yourself on the tools that will help you to really get to know yourself on a deeper level. And that's one of the reasons I called my new training The Awakening of the Empty Nester, because we're asleep. We're not woken up. I mean, that term is isn't it funny? The culture is, there's this like woke culture. That's a term now. But the collective is really not awake about the right things, not awake about what's driving their actions, not awake about why they believe what they believe, and not awake about why, like, could I be open to how I could think differently? Not awake to that internal love and acceptance and spirit and soul that is true love. That's what we need to be woke in. And that wokeness, that is such a big part of the collective right now, is keeping the collective blind and not accepting of the other souls who are all came into this world just like them. So knowing yourself is one of the most important things that I think a human needs to do. And I find that when we get to this place in life and we feel lost and we feel empty and we feel confused, it's a soul searching time. I just had an astrologer on, and she talks about the second return of Saturn and how it happens when around age 60. It's a time of reawakening. And so we're a lot of us, this is like written in the stars, so they say, right? That we do have this time to that we come to where we're evaluating, and it's a good thing. So knowing yourself, and this is the time, this is the opportunity to do that. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life not knowing and being lost? Be more scared of that than scared of taking a step forward and really figuring it out. And that's what stops a lot of people is they don't take the step. It's easier to stay in the place you're at. That's the human brain protecting you. And again, we'll talk about that in the training. So that is what I had to say today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm very passionate about the subject. I want you to stand in your authentic self. I want you to love yourself and I want you to embrace it. And I want you'll feel empowered and you'll feel beautiful and you'll feel like there's nothing can stop you and you don't care what other people think. And you're just going to do what you came here to do, that you know that you came here to do it. And it lights you up in ways that you hadn't even imagined.